Happy Friday, my friends. I hope all of you are doing awesome. It's Friday and I'm super excited, so pop in here, come and say hi, ask some questions. Yes, I still have my cold from Mexico, and it's actually kind of chilly out as we head into the end of October, but I've got my lovely slug mug here. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've been on my Instagram story. And so I'm enjoying a nice homemade, it's almost done, but pumpkin spice latte. So good. And I'm in my she shed. I've got two heaters. I've got one behind me. I've got one in front of me because it's getting cold. And pretty soon I'm going to have to move myself inside when it starts getting really cold. So hey Amanda, nice to see you. I hope a few of you join me this morning because I want to talk about something I'm so passionate about and so excited about. Now, I know that I talk about living fearless, I talk about overcoming anxiety, but I also think that there's a lot of you, because I receive a lot of notices from some of you. Hey Dora, it's my daughter, she's joining me. Receive a lot of you guys. Okay, Jennifer, I'll try and get to the point in 10 minutes. Nice to see you guys. So I know I talk a lot about anxiety, and it's kind of been my thing, but I have a really deep passion for helping those who have stories to help it get out in the world. So many of you may not know this about me, but I've been a part of the Writers Guild in Canada for many years. It's been a little bit quiet in the last year or so, but flying out to writers' conferences have been life-changing for me. And since then, I've had the opportunity to teach writing to people. I've held some workshops, and lots of friends who just often ask me, you know, what can I do to get my story out there? Because I think that there are so many of you who have these incredible stories. So some of you have incredible stories of overcoming. Some of you have incredible stories of your past, like your memoir. Some of you have incredible stories of, you know, the things you've achieved or the excitement you've had in your life. Like, it's not always has to be about overcoming. But some of you guys have these stories, and you've often said to yourself, you know, should I share? Shouldn't I share? What should I do? I think there's so much power when we share our personal experiences, and this has been life-changing for me when I finally found the courage to release my own personal story with my battle with mental illness. So I have a few stories I want to share with you today, because I love how God says that's going to be by the power of our testimony that actually makes a difference in this world, and He even understands the power of story. So one of the things that kind of holds us back is that we're really afraid to share our truth. And I don't blame you, because there's a lot of time where you share your truth and your experience and no one really understands you. They don't get where you're coming from. They don't have empathy for what you're experiencing. And when we've stepped out to share stories and we've kind of received a strange glare, it can be quite intimidating. This was especially true for me when it came to sharing about my walk with anxiety and depression and the crazy thoughts that were going on in my head. I soon learned that it wasn't really safe for me to share what was really going on as I was going through it. But that all changed as I became an overcomer. So there was this one time where I was at a resting retreat, which is amazing, and one day I'd love to host it and invite you all to come. But it was a resting retreat, and it was just a retreat to go and do nothing and just connect with God. And there was this woman there as they were having some quiet time around the fire at the end of one evening, and all of a sudden she just broke down out of nowhere. And this was a woman that had a high position in a very large church, and someone who, you know, had it all together. A lot of people depended on her. Sound familiar? Yeah. And she broke down to share her experience with crippling depression. And as she began to share, you know, my heart just, I knew exactly what she was talking about. She was speaking my language. And I could tell that she was so vulnerable in that moment. It was so hard. And all the women gathered around her, and they prayed for her, and they encouraged her. And it was good, and they needed to do that. But as soon as the crowd left, I went and I sat beside her, didn't know her at all. And I said, can I tell you my story? And she kind of looked at me like, okay, here we go. And I proceeded to tell her my story. And and that was it. Like we talked for a little bit, and I shared with her my experience and my story. And to this day, I still, every once in a while, either get a notice from her or see a post that she posts thanking me for being willing to share my story with her in that moment. And what happened was for me sharing my story, my messy story, my victory story, gave her such incredible hope and helped her to feel that she wasn't alone and that there was a way out. Because oftentimes when people are in situations that you've overcome, you know what it's like in those situations. They feel like this is the end of the end, and they're not sure how they're going to overcome this. So for some of you, that might be overcoming serious illness. For some of you, that might be, paying off debt. Some of you, that might have been going through a divorce or being a single parent, or in my case, overcoming mental illness. Some of you, it might have been amazing goals and things that you achieved despite all odds. And so your stories are so impactful to the people around you, and God uses our stories. I shared in my blog yesterday, but I'll share it with you in person about my experience when I went to my very first writers conference. So I had gone to this writers conference, and I was sort of a reporter in a way. Like, I was interviewing a lot of the publishers and the authors that were there and kind of doing a behind the scenes expose, so to speak. And I remember, excuse me, Mexico. I remember sitting down at one of the last lunches that they had, and I sat with this publisher, and very intimidating for me, who wasn't really a writer at the time and whatnot. And so I sat down and we were chatting, and it's an opportunity to network and kind of talk about writing and whatever. And so I asked her a question, and to be honest, you guys, it just kind of flew out of my mouth. I was like, just to backtrack, I'd been wanting to share, I had a lot of things in my heart. I'd been blogging for a while, but I was feeling really stuck and really discontented and discouraged, because I knew that I had these gifts and I knew I wanted to kind of work on them, but I didn't know how or where. And so this writers conference, you guys, was life-changing for me. Life-changing because I was around people that really got me, that really were a lot like me, who had incredible stories. Some of the writers that I've met at these conferences have incredible stories. In fact, I just saw a post the other day of a young man and his mom, and he has autism. And they have co-written this book, and it's still going because their story is incredible. And he's one of the authors of it. It's unbelievable. And so it's just really amazing to see, how people are using their stories. So here I am thinking, am I even, supposed to be here? Am I really a writer? And just like, I'm not sure what I have to share with the world, yada, yada. And just soaking it all in. And I sat down at this table, and this question blurted out of my mouth. And it was, have you ever had a book come across your desk where you were like, yeah, it's not a fit or whatever. But when you rejected it, you just felt a nudging in your spirit, or you felt God say to you, you need to go back. You need to publish this book. And she just stared at me, dumbfounded. And she said, I've never been asked that question. That's a great question. And she says, yeah, I have actually. I had this one book that came across my desk, and she said, I read it and it was good. And she said, but it wasn't a fit for us. We didn't do that kind of genre. It wasn't whatever. So she put it in the discard pile, and she said that something just kept nagging her to go back to this book, go back to this book, go back to this book. So she finally did. And then she said from that point on, she did everything she could in her power with her connections to make sure that this manuscript got into the right hands so that it was published. And I said, that's really cool. That's amazing. What book is it? And she said the book was by Francine Rivers, called Redeeming Love. And the moment those words came out of her mouth, I was in a full, matrix. I was in a full, I just remember sitting there, and when you have those experiences where you don't notice anything else around you? It's like in the movies, right, where everything else just fades in the background and you're just kind of stunned in this place. That was me. Because however many years ago from that point, I'm thinking, well, it probably would have been about 13, 14 years from that point. I was a single mom. I was on welfare. I had 2 young children. My 2-month-old baby boy was dying of a serious lung infection. So we were in the hospital, and he had to be on life support, and I was alone. It was traumatic. It was a very scary time in my life. And as I was there, a friend came to kind of bring me a care package to brush my teeth because I was sleeping in the hospital room with my son the whole time. And she said, I just finished reading this book. I thought you might enjoy reading it. And I'm not a big fiction reader. I know that sounds bad, but like my idea of a good read is a good self-help book. I'm just saying, I've always been like that. And so I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. Well, I got sucked into this book. And I read it within a couple days because I had nothing else to do but lay there and be anxious about a sick baby. And this book really kept me distracted. But this book by Francine Rivers changed my life. And I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but it was a story about a woman who was unredeemable, completely unworthy, just the scum of the earth, and how this man took her in through the love of Christ, and he loved on her, and he did everything for her, no matter how much she rejected him and everything she did. And it was such a beautiful illustration of God's redeeming love in her life, and that changed me. I was so profoundly touched by that book. My entire self-worth changed after reading it, my view of what God thought of me, and it gave me the courage and the self-confidence to step out of my situation, to make changes in my life, to seek God fully, to know that I was not unworthy, that I was not written off because of where I was in my life. And so you can imagine that sitting there knowing that that story may have not been published, right, if that woman hadn't heard from the Holy Spirit. And it's such a powerful example of how the stories and the message that we have in our heart when we're willing to share it changes lives. If I hadn't read that book, I'm not sure I would have written this book. Does that make sense? Like it kind of begins to create this beautiful effect because we are tools and we are a vessel for God's message. So I'm just so passionate about that, if you can't tell. And so there's other ways of sharing our stories. And not only are they affecting people around you, but your personal stories actually, when you begin to speak it out and share it over and over and over again. Sometimes I think, how many years am I going to be talking about this over and over again? But every time I do, I'm brought back to that beautiful place where I remember and where I'm reflecting on the goodness of God in my life. It is so cathartic and so healing for yourself to be able to share your story with others. And then it also gives your experience, whatever that was, extreme purpose and value. That what I experienced wasn't just for my life lesson, wasn't just for me. This is something that has power and incredible influence on people who are going through that. When I was going through my breakdown, and I'm sure there was something out there, but I couldn't find it. And I know if some of you are struggling with anxiety and depression, you know that you Google everything. You've been searching for the right book, the right thing, the right whatever. And hang on here, my computer's. We will get through this live call without it copping out on me. I promise you. What was I saying now? My goodness, my screen just went away and some update popped up on my computer, but that's technology for you. Somebody help me. What was I talking about? Oh my gosh. Well, in order to share your story with the world, you have to remember your story and know what you're talking about. Anyway, so everyone is in a different stage. You are either walking through your story right now or you're coming out of it. And I want to help you guys find a place and a platform for your book. Now I remember what I was talking about. I was talking about searching for somebody, anybody, thank you, Jennifer, who had walked my journey and came out of it. And I barely could find anything because nobody was willing to talk about it. And especially in the Christian circle, nobody was willing to talk about harm OCD. Like, who is willing to speak on that? Who is willing to say, oh yes, I'm a, pastor and I'm this and I had all this, and all of a sudden I was so struck down by depression. And you see hints of it. Like after I've gone through it, I'll read some stuff and I go, oh, okay, I know what was really going on. But no one was ever really willing to be real and vulnerable with their story and their experience. So I knew as I was going through this, the fact that I could not find a resource that was practical and very in-depth in bringing us closer to God as well. I couldn't find the balance. It was one or the other. It was just get over it, just pray more, just fast more, just whatever. Or it was, you know, you need to do this and eat that and all this kind of stuff. And I needed something that was balanced because I knew that this was a full body, mind, and spirit healing. And so that was part of the motivation behind me beginning to share my story with overcoming. And sure enough, I started just like all those other frustrating, you know, blog posts and books where they kind of mention it, but not really. And it took a lot of prompting from God to really push me into being vulnerable and open about my experience. And it has been incredibly healing and incredibly rewarding for me. And so I want to encourage you, those of you who feel like you're kind of just coming out, this is the time to share your experience. So some of you are actually watching this, are in my Fearless Traveler course. This is perfect for those of you who have been in it for a while and you're ready to start sharing your experience, helping other people. Because when you reach out and you help other people through your story, that's where you'll find your final freedom. We never wait until we're 100% set free before we minister, because, you know, think of Joseph. Like, he was not 100% set free before he was using his gifts and his talents, and he was, you know, interpreting dreams and serving in the prison when he was there, and you know, God blessed him because of that. And so I don't think that, you know, you have to know what stage you're in. If you're in the thick of it, you need to be very precious with your story. It needs to stay with you. You need to get that healing and comfort. But you're coming out of it, you have an obligation to pull the next person out of whatever situation you have been in. And so I'm really excited to let you guys know that I'm launching this new course. It's a 4-week course, and November is a perfect time. And we are going to work hands-on together to get your story out. And I'm not just talking about publishing, because right now, publishing is a long journey and it's tough, but you have amazing tools set before you to reach thousands of people with your message. You can do it through blogging, you can do it through social media, and there's so many of you guys who've tried to do that. You really want to do that. You know, you've shared your testimony or your story in small circles. You've maybe put it out there and received nothing. And it can be very discouraging and overwhelming. And so I want to kind of take you from that beginning stage of, I have a story, what do I do with it, and help you build a platform to get your story started, to get it launched, connect with people around you. I get emails from people from the Philippines, from Australia. I have had emails from 14-year-olds to 95-year-olds, from men, from women, from nurses to counselors to, you know, stay-at-home moms to businessmen, thanking me for having the courage to share my story. And I've been able to do that by using the gifts of God, like the tools that He's given us. And we can't be afraid to use those things. And so oftentimes we can see social media as, you know, narcissistic and very, you know, for the young people, or, you know, I don't like it, I feel uncomfortable with it. But God has given us an amazing opportunity to reach people from all ends of the earth with our story, and watch what happens when you begin to speak vulnerably. So I want to take you on this journey. And so details to come. We're going to launch in November. This is when the course starts. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm just going to be giving you guys a little bit more information. So if you go into this live video, or the video once it's not live, you'll see a little link. Click on that and enter in your email address. And it's just, I'm not going to spam you, but for the next couple weeks, you're going to get you know, trickles of information that's going to lead you to this course and see if it's a fit for you. It's going to be super hands-on. So I'm going to be, you know, you guys are going to get started. We're going to be setting some goals together. We're going to actually do the work together. You and I are going to have chats like this in a group. I'm going to have a chance to look at what you've already started and help you out, critique you, and help you get through the overwhelm of the technical side of blogging and all that stuff, but also really encourage and inspire you and your story to reach the world. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. So even if, you know, you don't want to put your story out there, you don't want to whatever, and that's totally fine. But I want to encourage you, if you have a story and you have something that you know that you've experienced, I just want you to know it's not your story to keep. That God has given you that story and that experience with Him to rescue other people. And so watch in your day-to-day life for opportunities for you to sit down with somebody who is, you know, breaking down at a resting retreat and put your arm around them and say, you know what? Me too. Me too. I've been here too. I totally understand. Here's my story. When you share your story with others, it is truly a gift to them. So that's it. And I just love chatting with you guys. It's hard to get off, but I'm gonna, because I got work to do. I gotta get this course ready for you guys. It's gonna be awesome. So share this video with your friends, because there's somebody out there who doesn't know that I exist, who have no idea that there's resources available to them for struggling with severe anxiety and panic disorders. So I know that you all know somebody, so share my stuff so they can find me, so that they can be touched too by my story. And share this with your friends. You know, this would be an awesome project to do with a friend. Do it together, and we're really going to get to know each other one-on-one. It's going to be an awesome time. So stay tuned. Bye. Fearless Friday.